It's hard to remember when I joined, actually. It's been so long. It's been 32 years. I joined in 1979, and I'm a bit embarrassed to admit it, but I joined primarily for the ego boost that I thought it would give me to actually think that I would belong to an organization like Mensa. Fortunately for me, my reasons for being in Mensa changed dramatically. The ego boost was great. It felt good to belong. Very honestly, I wasn't sure whether I belonged. I had to take the test to make sure. I had taken many tests in school, and I always did very well in the tests that seemed to be intelligence-based, but I still wasn't sure. So it was quite nice to find out that I really did belong. Getting to the reasons why I continue to belong, I think that's a later question, so I will save that for later. Well, I'm fortunate enough to live in an area where there are a lot of Mensans. I live in Northern California, and just in Northern California there were probably about 3,000 Mensans. So it's quite easy to find something to attend, whether it be a dinner function, a theater function, a book function. And in addition, each of the local groups in the U.S. Have their own annual gatherings or regional gatherings. So there is always at least one regional gathering going on someplace in the country, probably 2 or 3 each month of the year. The thing I like most about Mensa, though, is the international perspective. I actually didn't realize that Mensa was that much of an international organization until I'd probably been in the organization for 2 or 3 years. Because the U.S. Mensa organization is so large, I think you get the feeling that that's Mensa, and you don't realize that there are so many other countries and so many other members outside the U.S. But when I did find that out, that was fascinating to me. I don't think that there are very many organizations where you can say that the board of directors has about 40 members, very large board of directors, but they're from 28, 29, 30 different countries. You have a large table when the board meets, not necessarily round, but whatever shape fits the room. But you have people sitting next to each other who perhaps have never met, and they perhaps live 2,000 or 3,000 miles away from each other. Yet, the person sitting next to you turns out to be just like your next door neighbor. It is incredible how we become one when we get together, despite the fact that we come from so many different countries. It was fascinating to be the chairman of the organization for a couple of years. Yes, people disagree, and that's what's so great about Mensa. Because people disagree, we learn stuff. I love the presentations that I go to when I go to some events like EMAG. There was one last night that was fascinating. I learned a great deal from it. And that happens often, and I love to learn. I think most Mensans do love to learn. There's so many things that attract me in Mensa. Mensa has become my second family. And for 30-odd years, I have a place to go. My real family doesn't live that close to me, but Mensa does live close. And boy, it's just like a second family to me. Well, you did mention that Mensa has some members who, let me try and find a polite way to say this, are unusual. And to some extent, that's exciting, because the unusual people are kind of fun to be with sometimes. But as with any organization, you always have some members who perhaps do not understand just how to participate in a socially correct manner. And we do have to deal with those, and I think we try to deal with them very carefully, and I think we try to work with the individuals who do have some problems and help them understand that perhaps if they behave in a different manner, that they may be accepted more. There aren't too many things that really bother me about Mensa. That I do wish, as Christine mentioned, that people would participate more. But on the other hand, I am not one to say that we should try to force people to participate. I think people should be a member of Mensa for whatever reason they choose. If they choose only to read a monthly bulletin they receive from their national Mensa, that's fantastic. We get their membership dues, and it helps other people. So that's wonderful. I like the fact that people join perhaps for no good reason at all other than to read the bulletin or to have the membership card. I do wish that more would participate. I think it would make things more exciting for those of us who do participate. Oops. After 32 years, it's kind of hard to quit. So. But Christine mentioned it, the people are what keep me in Mensa. I mentioned it, to me, it's a second family. And I know Christine's getting really tired of me saying these next few things, but I'm going to say them anyway. Most of us in Mensa, as we were growing up, felt that we didn't belong for whatever reason. It may be that the children around us didn't really accept us. And as we grew older, sometimes the situation stayed the same. We still felt like we didn't belong. We weren't necessarily accepted by those around us. It could be at work. It could be our neighbors that live next to us. Mensa is a place where you can go and you can walk into a room of Mensans whom you've never met before in your life, and you feel like you belong. And you know that you're accepted. And that you know that if you say something, that they're going to listen to you. And you know that if someone else says something, you're likely to learn something. So there's just so many fascinating aspects about Mensa that keep me in the organization, but I think that's the biggest one. I rarely go to a fairly large meeting of Mensans like EMAG, where I'm not asked the question, oh, what about gifted children? And what do we do about them? How do we help gifted children's parents with the education of their children? I'm not sure that Mensa has done an awful lot in the past. I know we've tried. I think we're starting to make some inroads into providing more support for the parents of gifted children. The Mensa Foundation, which used to be primarily in the U.S. but is now becoming more of an international part of Mensa, is starting to provide quite a bit of information for parents of gifted children, even subject plans, class plans for education. But it's so important that we find gifted children early, identify them early, and once we have identified them, provide them with as much information as we can to help them along in their life. I think very early on is when we need to catch them and need to provide them with that information. I keep learning things that help me to overcome some of the disadvantages of being more intelligent than most. I would hope that we'd be able to teach our children those things much earlier in life. I could have used them 20, 30, 40 years ago. But we need to, we always get questions from parents who are not even members, but they know that Mensa is an organization for the gifted. And they have a gifted child, and they have no idea how to handle that child. They have no idea how to make sure their child gets a proper education. I think we need to do as much as we can to educate the parents and thereby educate the children. Just talking about the gifted adult and how the gifted adult has to deal with everything around them. And I learned a few things last night, and they weren't things I necessarily didn't know, but I hadn't realized them. For example, I think that most of us are able to, what we call, read people when we meet them. We'll meet someone, especially if we've known them for a while, we know how they'd like us to respond to them, how they'd like us to treat them. And that's a tremendous asset, especially in the work environment with your superior, your boss, to understand what that person is expecting of you, because they won't always tell you. And even if they do, they may not realize what they really expect. But by reading that person, by knowing what that person wants, that's a big advantage in the work environment. Things like that. If you don't know that you've got that advantage and then don't know how to use it, I think that's a disadvantage. Things like that we need to be able to teach our children early on as possible. Maybe they're going to exploit their parents as a result, but maybe that's good. Maybe that's good experience for them.